So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was directed by Quentin Tarantino, and it stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, and a whole lot of other people, including Al Pacino. And if you couldn't tell, just by this tux that I had to break out, this is actually a movie that is set in 1969 Hollywood, and about an aging actor who has to come into terms and learn how to age gracefully. And before I actually get into my review, if you love this video, make sure that you subscribe right down here so you can watch a whole lot more of these videos and know when they come out, because I do this all the time. So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the 9th movie by Quentin Tarantino, and I would say that as far as Quentin Tarantino and his career and what I think about him, because this is actually the first time that I have talked about Quentin Tarantino on this channel, I would say that his early work is pretty excellent, with the exception of Jackie Brown, which I would just consider very good. And around the time of Kill Bill Volume 2, his films became a lot more self-indulgent in my mind, and they definitely took a more languid pace to the point where I still like them, but I definitely do realize that I like his earlier films just better, just because of pacing and just overall how the plot flows in those earlier films. And even though that still applies to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I would say as far as Quentin Tarantino's latest films, it might be my favorite. And that is largely because of the performances by Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt here. Now, my man Leo here plays Rick Dalton, and Rick is just a smooth Western actor that stars in all of the Western TV shows throughout the 1950s into the early 1960s, and now is just having a real hard time gripping with the fact that he no longer is really relevant, and there are a lot of younger actors that could potentially take his mantle and have actually taken his mantle. It is a lot of him and coming to terms with that and learning how to age gracefully, because up to this point he has not. He has always taken to drinking and being a lush and being a mess, and even though he calls himself out on it multiple times throughout the movie, he's just such a mess that even though he realizes the things that are his faults, he cannot stop being this version of himself. He can't better himself, and that is just a very relatable character. You know, we all have faults. Nobody is perfect, and alone, which he very much is, with the exception of his best friend played by Brad Pitt, it's just, you can't fix those problems just by yourself. And that is just a dilemma that Rick Dalton is really in. You know everybody in Hollywood, but are these people truly your friends? I don't 100% think so, and that is also something that Rick Dalton has to come to terms with. A lot of the people that he worked with back in the day have moved on, and they are not supporting him anymore, and that is just a problem that he faces. Leonardo DiCaprio is excellent in this role as being that confident actor that you know he can be, but showing a great amount of vulnerability as he realizes things about himself. But equally just as good as Leonardo DiCaprio in this movie is Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth. Now, Cliff is Rick's stunt double, or at least he was at one point in time. all of this gets revealed very naturally throughout the movie. You're kind of just wondering about these characters, and then you learn about them very organically throughout this movie. But Cliff, he has just a harder edge than Rick does. They're best friends still, but Cliff just really knows how to handle himself. He's a lot more confident in where he is in his life, even though, he doesn't have the life that Rick does. He doesn't care. He is confident in the place that he is in his life, and it shows throughout Brad Pitt's acting. Brad Pitt has just an aura of confidence in this movie and smoothness that really, I haven't seen in him in a long, long time. And I haven't wanted to be Brad Pitt as much, really, since Fight Club. I have always wanted to be that, that just charismatic Tyler Durden character. And I want to be Brad Pitt here just because I want that cool. And he is so cool in this movie. Now, these are our two main characters, and we do follow them through a large majority of this movie. But what I would say that the main thrust and the main focus of this movie is really 1969 Hollywood and the level of detail that goes into recreating what it was like at that period of time. And Quentin Tarantino does that expertly here. He is such an expert and such a meticulous director, and he just has an eye for detail that so many other directors just really lack. I love movies that are about a certain place, about a very certain point in time, and that is this movie, and it never breaks that immersion. I also feel like this is a very important movie for people to see, just because of the fact that I believe that movies are cut in such a way that every scene has to have just a very specific purpose, a specific reason for being. And anything extra that is left to just character moments or just lingering to build suspense, it literally is stripped out of 99.9% of films out there today. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is that 1%. This movie knows how to linger and build suspense when it wants to. It also knows how to linger for character moments, just for more subtle things that you are supposed to pick up about the characters. And this movie doesn't always want to come to your level. This movie wants you to come to its level, and it requires something from its audience, and I do feel like that is important, and it is something that truly is lacking in modern day filmmaking, that again I do have to commend Quentin Tarantino for, because he is one of the filmmakers that really still requires this from his audience. But on the flip side to that coin, and there is a flip side, he is also a very self-indulgent filmmaker. And some scenes linger on more than they should. And they don't always have that payoff. This is not a perfect film, and a lot of what is imperfect with it is not all the scenes pay off. They feel like things put here because the filmmaker wants them here, and not because of a very specific reason. And that is a problem in certain scenes. Not a whole lot, but a few. And that is something that I feel not just is a problem with this movie, but is a problem with a lot of older, but is a problem with a lot of Quentin Tarantino's latest efforts. He also really wants to put his mark in a lot of scenes that lets you know, hey, I penned this script and I wrote this. I came up with this idea. And he just really likes to wink at the audience in his own way. I wouldn't be surprised if he is actually in the background in one of these shots and eventually somebody catches it. It is the man that Quentin Tarantino is, and I don't 100% go along with that aspect of him. This movie is like an alternate version of 1969 Hollywood. The two main characters aren't real people, but everyone that surrounds them is. So Sharon Tate is one of those characters, and in fact, she actually lives a house away from Rick. Her character is only here for a very specific purpose. And without that purpose, she doesn't have a lot of place in this movie. And without giving things away, I will just say that she doesn't even interact at all with the majority of the cast in this movie. It seems like whenever I am watching her, I am watching a different movie just set in this time. And that is unfortunate. I do really like Margot Robbie as a character. I just don't know the real place that Sharon Tate has in this movie other than spoilers. But when all is said and done, this is a marvelous vision and a really great cinematic achievement. I will say that I don't like this movie as much as other people do, but I respect it just as much as other people do. I feel like people need to watch this just so they can really be inspired to make more films that require more from its audience, and I feel like that is the biggest achievement that this movie has to offer, and I do give it an 8 out of 10. And speaking of cinematic gems, next I do have to talk about Hellboy in Blu-ray and 4K. No, not the Guillermo del Toro film, not the really good one. I have to talk about the 2019 Hellboy film because it just came out in 4K, and of course I am reviewing it for you guys. After that, I have to review so much Marvel. It is crazy. So I will be getting those Marvel reviews for you guys out in time for August 13th when all of those Iron Man and Avengers Endgame and Thor films come out in 4K. And I will get those reviews out for you when I get them as well. And as always, thank you for watching my videos. You guys are awesome. I don't even say it because you know it. And I will see all of you next time.